about to see is true. The names have been changed to protect the innocent.
Good afternoon, Mr. Choronv. How are you?
I'm doing good. Yourself?
I'm doing well. My name is Mrs. Choronv. I am the principal here at Texas Middle School. I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Bob Maker. He will also be asking you some questions.
Good afternoon, Mr. Choronv. I'm the assistant principal here. And second to Mrs. Choronv, the principal here at Texas Middle School. Look forward to this interview. Mr. Maker, I sure do appreciate it. I look forward to having a very successful interview with you and Mrs. Choronv and Texas Middle School.
So we'll get started. I'm going to start with the first question, and then Mr. Maker will proceed with the second question. So the first thing we want to know is a little bit about you. Can you please tell us about yourself?
Well, originally, this may come as a shock applying for a math position, but I am a GED here in the state of Texas from Center, Texas. I got my GED in September of 2000 from Panola Junior College, halfway through my senior year. I had some family issues come up to where I needed to leave high school early. In response to that, to get my GED and straightening out certain family issues, I joined the military. I was in the Army for 18 years. I've signaled for most of my career. I started out as basically a glorified help desk position. I was 25 Bravo, information technologist, support specialist. Later on, I reclassed into digital cyber defense. My specialization was digital forensics, and making that dedicated and having to go through and make that change in my career guided me to pursue education at a higher level. Not only to better myself for the future, but in order to meet the requirements of staying within that particular job for the Army, I had to pass certain certifications that were heavily math-based. In order for me to do so, it would be in my best interest to take math. So I got my undergraduate degree from Charleston State University in 2016. And my major was information technology with a minor in business. And then as I went to go do, as I was going through more training for my specialty in the Army, I decided that with all that training, I might as well go off and work on my master's. I received my master's from Sam Houston State University last year in digital forensics. But one of the key requirements for me to be able to complete my master's was catch up on more math. I was provisional admission due to two parts. One, I was a GED in the state of Texas, so I didn't have a real high school background according to them, which made sense. I'm a GED. The other reason is because my undergraduate and with all my junior college hours from Central Texas, I didn't have enough math credits to meet certain criteria for the prerequisites for a couple of classes like cryptology. Real math heavy. According to Sam Houston, the requirement was calculus 2. And at that point, I had only had elementary statistics and college algebra. While taking my courses at Sam Houston, they granted me provisional as long as I went and continued my math. And I would do a semester at Sam and a semester at Central Texas College in Queen, catching up on my math. And through the course of that, I got a letter from Central Texas College saying, hey, you're real close to getting your associates in mathematics. Oh, okay. Well, what do I need? And they said, well, you only need 4 more hours of science. So I went to take chemistry 1, finished up and got my associates associates in mathematics. Now, while I was doing my undergraduate work, I was basically preparing for my life after the Army and enrolled into the Troops Teachers program here in the state of Texas. I'm Texas native. The only time that I've been out of Texas is my time in the Army. And I got back as soon as I could. Going through the Troops to Teachers program in conjunction with my undergraduate degree, I was put in the alternate route program for teaching since I couldn't do the student teaching, meet the student teaching requirements while I was in the Army. Matter of fact, my first semester that I was in the program, I got assignment orders to Naples, Italy, which was a great assignment, but last I checked, there weren't any Texas independent school districts over there to student teach in. And Dodea can be kind of finicky when it comes to student teaching, other states' requirements to become a teacher, because it's understood that when you go into the Dodea system that you're already certified in whatever state granted that certification, whatever grade level, whatever specialization there is, et cetera, et cetera. So I went through the alternate route, and my hours for teaching were met through the Army Basic Instructors course, working at the Non-Commissioned Officers Academy at Fort Gordon, Georgia, when I went back for Senior Leaders course. I have over 500 hours instruction time on platform for junior enlisted, senior non-commissioned officers, all the way up to 2-star generals. I've taught on the Army side in the Department of Defense. I've taught the basic installers course, which is fiber installation, basic principles of network management and infrastructure, which is real math heavy for this, especially within the Cisco world. When I first went through and got my Cisco Certified Network Administrator certification for routing and switching, subnetting can be taught in a course all of its own at graduate level math. As I was going through all of this, it hit me that I'm real math heavy. That if I were to go back and look at all the courses that I took through undergraduate, through grad school, through the alternate Texas teaching certification, and even through the Army, and even when I was back in high school before I had to leave for issues, I've taken more math courses and STEM courses than I have any other courses altogether. That being said, I decided at that point, I was in my second year of the alternate route through Charleston, and I said, I really want to teach math. And I'm not a picky person. I'm willing to teach math at the higher level, the beginning level, middle level, wherever I can be fit into properly. Math is a very robust subject. There are many different specializations within mathematics in general. Teaching more people the basics and advanced placements of mathematics does nothing but help society in general. The more people you have that understand mathematics, the more that they can go off and do on their own later on in life. Mathematics is in everything that we do. Yes, my background is computers and digital forensics and network management and all this other stuff. But even though that's math heavy, I was taught basic geometry by a mechanic who didn't even complete 10th grade. And he was my mentor for all through my high school years as far as understanding concepts of mathematics at that time that I didn't understand. And that is an interesting point that you bring up, because just like you said, a mechanic taught you how to do understand basic principles of mathematics. Cubic displacement in the motor block, has math written all over it. And understanding the principles of gear ratios and transmissions and how combustion ratios work and versus unleaded and diesel, that makes a whole lot of sense. And I can understand, construction work having mathematics involved in it all the time, because everything has to be square. You have to understand your angles and the geometry and trigonometry of the actual structure itself. Otherwise, building can fall down due to high winds.
I can see a lot of real world applications for your classroom if you choose to bring it in and show students how what you're teaching them is relevant to what they're able to do in the future and what jobs opportunities there are as well.
Tell us a little bit more, Ms. Corin, about how when you were studying mathematics, obviously you have a full-time job and being in basically two different programs at once. How would you bring this to the classroom and for students to relate to that? Does that sound like a good question to ask?
That's a great question.
Mr. Maker, the biggest lesson that I've learned throughout my Army career, especially going through those multiple programs, is time management. And that's something that you can bring to the students as well, too. Homework is, let's be honest, burdensome. Kids don't want to do it most times. But that's fine. They have to understand that the homework is worth it to help them build on the lessons that they're receiving in the classroom and benefiting from. So if they have proper time management both in and out of the classroom, the students are able to better understand the lessons and better manage their time between doing homework and also doing other stuff that they may like to do. And then that other stuff that they may like to do, since they have the time to do it, they may see the same thing that we're all seeing right here, is that in mathematics, you can find it anywhere. So I think that's something that has to be really stressed in the classroom, is that it's not school all the time, it's not homework all the time. It's a mixture of both. And that time management piece is critical in the students understanding that.
Thank you. Mr. Baker, do you have a question?
Well, Ms. Corin, there is a critical piece to being a classroom teacher. And I understand that this is, in fact, going to be your first full-time position if you do get selected for it. That being said, the students are all in different places as far as ability, conceptual understanding of the curriculum. So where do you see the priority being placed on the student as far as what they know, how they know it, when they know it? Because you're going to have students that on the scale, especially with the STAR test, students that understand what's going on, students that don't understand what's going on. How do you bridge that gap? Well, Mr. Maker, that's not a problem that's just specific to mathematics. That could be viewed in every subject that's taught, not only in grade school, but also in collegiate level courses as well, too. However, every instructor must understand that, hey, let's be honest, not every student is going to get the first time go around. Sometimes you forget something at the house, you have to drive back and go get it. Not every trip's going to be perfect, but you learn. You learn that next time you take your next trip out with the family, don't forget the sunscreen. Pre-pack sunscreen. So that way you don't have to come back around and get it again. Taking that to the classroom model is that when a teacher is standing in front of the classroom or any type of instruction that's going on, you're going to make note that some students are going to get what you're saying and some aren't. Don't make that same mistake twice. Learn from it. Understand that every student needs to be taught as an individual. If I were able to say, class, this is our problem, everybody go. We wouldn't need schools for that. Everybody's got to start somewhere. And that everybody learns at different levels. So in order to avoid making those multiple trips, take the time to stay with each individual student, even if it means staying past hours and offering tutoring sessions within the school. We got to make sure that each student understands the curriculum that is being taught and is expected of them for that curriculum year.
If I walked into your classroom, what would I see?
Well, to be perfectly honest with you, there'd be a lot of standing up on my part. I'm not necessarily a fan of teaching from behind a desk or teaching from, I don't want to disparage any pre-made material for a class or curriculum, but going back to each individual student has each individual needs for curriculum. You're not necessarily going to know that unless you actually go to that student and make sure that they are grasping the material. I don't want to be an instructor that at the end of the year gets bombarded by star reports or grade level evaluations that says, hey, all your students messed up. Well, I didn't know all of you. I'm going to go out and check on each individual student throughout my classroom. So while I'm instructing, I will be moving about the classroom. Not necessarily to make sure that each student hears me, because I'm pretty hard of hearing myself, but to make sure to see their faces, to understand that they're engaged. And that's a big takeaway from basic instructor course, is that you have to stay engaged with each individual student in that classroom. And it's mathematics. They have to see it. Math is a very visual subject, because without the visual representation of mathematics, you have reading or something that you can close your eyes and imagine because it's not there. Why not take mathematics, its visual representation that it has to have already, and spread it throughout the classroom? You're going to have multiple areas of the classroom where mathematics instructors are going to be walking around writing stuff all over the boards. They have to, especially once you start getting into algebraic equations higher than this 7th grade position. Think about it. Trigonometry. There's not one single trig problem that can be done at the high school level that's going to take up this much space on the board. It's going to be a big enough board to where everybody can see it, to where everybody can see the concepts being instructed throughout that problem. And that's just one problem. I will try throughout the curriculum to implement physical, visual, understandable representations of what that mathematics means. If I need to bring in, like Mr. Maker was referencing earlier, a transmission to talk about gear ratios, I'll bring one in. I'll pull it out of my own truck if I need to. Don't you threaten me with a good time. So, since math is a very visual subject, it has to be taught visually. Stimulation of the eyes encourages that visualization of mathematics.
Okay. Mr. Maker?
Mr. Choronv, could you kind of go into the basics of your teaching style or philosophy?
Mr. Maker, I can sum up my entire teaching philosophy with what I call the sandwich model. Everybody knows that when you have a sandwich, you generally have 2 pieces of bread, substance in the middle, whether it's meat, not meat, pick something. Looking at that sandwich, I want to say that the 2 pieces of bread are good, and the middle substance of that sandwich is maybe not so good, or something we can improve on, or hey, maybe they did a really good job and it's more good, that's a bigger sandwich. So we start off with, let's say a student gets something incorrect. Well, I see that you went about it this way and that was good, following this philosophy. However, let's move into how we can make this better. How can we improve on this? How do we get to the end of this and find out we can do it correctly and learn from it? And then following that up with something else good. I see that you are continually striving to improve yourself here. Your test scores are improving. Your homework scores are still improving. So I want to take that sandwich model and encompass it, or I want to take that sandwich model and basically make it my main teaching philosophy, is that we know that students have the capability and have the basic ability to do any level of mathematics that we put ahead of them, as long as they're given the opportunity, and as long as we also incorporate the sandwich model in there to encourage and not discourage students to perform mathematics.
Mr. Maker?
Well, Mr. Choronv, another big issue that comes up for teachers all the time, whether we want to admit it or not, is discipline. So kind of give me a rundown of your basic discipline philosophy, ideas, what would happen if,
Classroom management style.
classroom management style, stuff like that. Mr. Maker, I understand discipline can be a big issue. Before I get into the actual discipline itself, I do want to stress that the engagements of the students will help prevent disciplinary issues throughout the course of the year. The more the students are engaged in the curriculum and are actually enjoying the curriculum, the less disciplinary problems you're going to have overall. You're never going to have a problem out of a student that enjoys doing something. Band students, for example, I was in band when I was in high school. You never had a band student that got in trouble. They wanted to be there. I want my students to be in that classroom, whether it's basic mathematics, pre-algebra, algebra, doesn't matter. I want them to be in there. And if they want to be in there, they're not going to cause any problems that I foresee. Now, you're right. No classroom is perfect. There are going to be disciplinary issues that arise. And although I want the students to feel that they can express themselves, I also want the students to understand that the school, myself, and the district have a very firm policy on discipline, and that certain disciplinary actions just can't be tolerated. I've taken the time to read over the disciplinary policy of the school and the district and understand that the rules are set in stone. If a student's being disruptive, it's basically their one strength. If a student continues to be disruptive, well, I can't just fly over a desk or do anything like that. But at the same time, the student has to be dealt with, because the more disruptive that student gets, the more it spreads throughout the classroom like the plague. So the student has to be dealt with firmly and swiftly in accordance to the district policy and the school policy itself.
How would you integrate technology in your learning environment or your lessons, or any other way like that to make sure students get an exposure to how technology applies to mathematics?
Well, technology is slowly but surely becoming everything that we do, whether it be in the vehicle, in the house, the refrigerator that has the screen on it. And that's my background, is technology in general. My job for years was to find out how you did it if you got in trouble. Starting off in school when I was in 8th grade was when I took my first computer course at all. I went to junior high in Groveton, Texas. K through 12 was in the same building. And my computer class was on an Apple IIe with BASIC as its language.
I remember those.
Yeah. I would like to keep it at memory. So, teaching the basic principles of mathematics increases the foundation of understanding the technology later on. Used to, when I was first learning how to program, you could take a dime off the Seattle Tower Space Needle, throw it off, and hit a programmer, and pay them $150,000 a year for programming, because they also haven't hung out in Seattle, and those are the only ones. It was just this new concept. Nowadays, you can go to any building, throw the same said dime, hit a programmer, and they're out of work. Or they're just basically scripting on their own. But every programming language, every concept of computers in general starts off with the programming logic and design of mathematics. When you're solving for variables, mathematics. When you're doing basic on and off routines, as far as processing co-functions, mathematics. Zeros and ones are numbers. I understand that this middle school has a programming preparatory course before high school in the 8th grade.
Correct.
When I went through my programming courses and course material through undergrad, it was taught, hey, in your first programming class in general will be programming logic and design. Because if you don't understand the logic of design, you can't program, or it becomes a mess. Mathematics is the foundation of that programming logic and design. If you don't understand the mathematics in basic format, you will not understand how that works into the technology. And as we move on day by day, we understand that technology is going to constantly just keep growing. The founder and president of Intel computer chips, he predicted back in the mid-60s that processors would shrink in size by halves until a certain point has been reached when we have to go into microtechnology. And that technology limit is going to be reached here in about 20 years. And so far, according to his model, he has been correct. And as those processors get smaller, so will all the other peripherals to technology devices in general. You've seen how phones have gone from taking up the back seat of a car, mobile phones, to being able to fit in my back pocket, or even smaller than that, like the Apple iWatch. You can't do any of that without math, because it has to be programmed. And you have to understand the basics of mathematics in order to be able to perform basics of programming. As students move on through school and start getting into the secondary educational scope, we're going to have more vocational courses and schools open up, like welding school. It used to be 6 months, you go to welding school, you learn how to weld, go weld. And you make good money at it, because welding is a very practical skill that not a lot of people can master. Pretty soon, we're going to have vocational schools for basic computers, basic installation, server installation, network management. And in order to understand those principles, they're going to have to understand basic mathematics. Now, whether these students go on to take pre-calculus AP in high school, I would love to see every student be able to do that. But I understand that's not everybody's cup of tea. So as long as they understand the basic principles, they will be ready for this technology that will evolve from this present time that we have. And eventually everything will be, minus the studs in the walls, will have a computer chip in it. For better or for worse, whether that technology helps us or not. But it's coming. Why delay the inevitable? Know it now. In the classroom, at the basic mathematics level though, I don't know if there's, and please don't take this the wrong way, I don't want to use an iPad for finding variables. But at the same time, I want to show how that finding the variable helps within the coding of an app that an 8th grader or 7th grader may want to make on their own, because that's open to everybody. So you don't want to use one to prop up what's supposed to be in the beginning, but you want to show the students what the beginning results in the end. So yes, more technology, but you don't want to oversaturate either, because the more that you're exposed to and overexposed to, the more you get desensitized to it. And it becomes the norm at that point. Oh, I have to go to sleep with my phone taped to my head. Oh, I have to use my iPad to be able to, add these two numbers together. You should be able to add two numbers on your own. Now, I grew up learning how to use abacus. So that was about as much computer as I had where I was raised. I don't want to have multiple abaci if I learn, but I do want them to understand this leads to this, these leads to this as far as technology goes, not the other way around.
What are your strengths as a teacher?
As far as my strengths in the classroom, I'm proud to say that if you're going to instruct something, you should know it. And this, I know. Mathematics is the foundation of everything that I've done thus far, and I've made it a point to make sure that I may not be the best, because I understand there's always somebody out there better. But I do know that this is my realm, and I'm good at instruction. I'm good at mathematics. So why not combine them together and use that as my main driving factor in the classroom? And if I'm confident enough to know that I know it in my sleep, my students will be confident enough to know that they can receive that lesson from me and know that that's right. No, I'm not going to be right all the time. And I'm going to have a couple problems here and there where students come up and try to second guess me and try to prove me wrong. But that's great. I want that to be encouraged, because if the students are going out of their way to try to prove me wrong, that means they've developed a way to do that, to complete that problem. And that's where I'm not 100% confident. I want to say I'm at 97% confident that I'm good at math, but that other 3% will be filled in by knowing that the students have gotten that material from me, and now they know how to do it well enough to where they can troubleshoot. So I'm a confident teacher, and my confidence is built upon even further by the students' confidence. And it's just a continuous cycle. Lastly, I don't really tire out easily. I don't sleep much at night. That's an Army habit. Go to bed late, wake up early. So I'm always working on ways to better improve the material that's in the classroom. Now, I don't want to go outside the teams. I understand that there are certain milestones that have to be hit throughout the school year. Every subject has them. Every teacher has to abide by them. State of Texas. But at the same time, if you understand that your students are strengthened here in this area, and you want to spend maybe a little bit of time polishing up this other area, if you're confident enough to do that, and you know the material well enough, and you know your students well enough, you can make a well-rounded student within the classroom of that one particular subject.
How would you handle a difference in philosophy with a colleague? Because you're going to be working among a team of teachers for your grade level. So for example, you'll have a writing teacher and a reading teacher and a science teacher. So how would you handle a difference in philosophy if you guys don't agree or find that you guys just can't get along? How do you handle that situation?
Everybody's different. No two people are alike, not even twins. Down at the DNA and molecular level, they're different too. And they have their own personalities. I feel like in order to be a teacher, you have to have a certain leadership aspect to you. Otherwise, you're being led. And that's not a teacher. Teacher's supposed to be out there leading the curriculum, leading the instruction to the students. So that being said, every teacher out there is an alpha. So with an alpha, what's one of the setbacks that you have? They're headstrong. They don't like to do things not their way. I don't know if that made perfect sense.
No, it does.
Teachers argue. But that's the difference between teachers within a professional environment and two people beating each other at Walmart over parking space. Is that even though you are an alpha and you are headstrong and you don't like doing things the other people's way, is that a professional will find common ground to work with. Two professionals in a professional profession like we are in right now will find a way to make it work for the students. The biggest thing I want to stress there is that the entire school year, you're going to bump heads with somebody. It's going to happen. I want to stress that it's very important that the students don't see that, because students need to see a united front from every teacher within the campus. If the teachers are arguing with each other in public, if the teachers are having this out where students can see, especially the parents, all that does is disparage the school and the district, and it's completely unnecessary. And if the trust is already broken between the district or the campus and that community, all it does is just sit down even further. You can be wrong, but be willing to accept the right answer. And being a teacher, you had to go through and learn how to be a teacher. So at one time you were a student too, and you had to sit and learn. Just because you're a teacher now doesn't mean that you're just shut off to learn.
Right.
So find common ground. Don't do it in front of the students. Have a united front. Be willing to compromise and be willing to find the best solution, not for you, but for the students.
But Mr. Choronv, I can't tell you that's how basically headstrong you are, and you bring a lot of great ideas and a great teaching philosophy to this interview. But everybody has a weakness, and I kind of like to know what that weakness is and how do you plan to get around it. I would say that one of my biggest weaknesses is, Mr. Maker, and I'm pretty sure it's been apparent in this interview so far, is that I have a tendency to go around the elbow to get to the hand. Sometimes, especially in material where I don't feel like I'm articulating correctly and the point's not being received. I believe that brevity is the soul of wit. Don't get me wrong. That being said, though, I know that sometimes I don't quite, in my mind, know how to put what's up here to here, and I will say more words than are needed, just like now. It is a weakness. In order to overcome it, it's for me to understand the material or what I'm trying to say better. So my weakness, I talk too much. Overcome it, know your stuff better, talk shorter. And if the fewer words that are spoken to the students that they are able to take and make a comprehensible idea out of it to that lesson and complete it, the better. Because now you got more time to work on other stuff. So I'd rather teach a lesson and everybody understand it in 5 minutes than spend a week on it. But at the same time, too, I don't want that. I don't want that to be taken as I don't want to rush through my stuff. I want to make sure everybody understands the material. And if that takes a week, then it takes a week. That's why we have most campuses and districts throughout Texas have tutoring hours. So,
What is your view on parent involvement?
honestly, an interview with the proper answer is supposed to be. And that is, customer's always right. I want to try to say that without being too direct and blunt and making it sound like that I stand on either side of the fence with this. Parents have a critical role in their kids' future, in their education. Without parental involvement, it makes the time for the teacher more difficult, if not impossible. However, too much can tip the scales. If you have helicopter parents floating around, that will hamper and interfere with the other students that are trying to receive curriculum as well. There has to be a perfect balance between students at the school receiving instructions from the teacher, parental involvement. And lesson one, the other one has to overcompensate. And it's always a tipping scale. The parent, without the parent, at the very basic level, we don't have students. No parents, no students, no school. We're all out of a job. That being said, if you have a helicopter parent, there may be a trust issue between that parent and the campus or the district. And it may be on us to build that trust back. A lot of parents try to overcompensate by pushing their kids too far within the educational bounds. That is our role as educators, primarily to teach them not only the TEKS, but also the ability to think on their own
to take the material and go off and do whatever they want to do. We must not be doing a good job if we have too much parent involvement to the point where it hinders a student in that school. And that bridge has to be gapped. So but it interferes with that perfect balance. There is a point where we require the parent to do X, Y, and Z. But there's also equal expectations of the parent where the educators must do A, B, and C in order for those to be equal.
Mr. Maker, do you have any other questions?
How do you keep your students motivated? Motivation is key. Without motivation, Mr. Maker, students lose focus. They don't want to do the work. Students fail. We fail. If the students see that all their efforts are paying off, that will create the motivation for them to keep moving on. That means, as a math teacher to 7th grade here, Texas Middle School, should I get the position, it's my job and responsibility to make sure that they keep doing well enough and learning enough to keep succeeding. You cannot improve morale by increasing the beans, is the saying that we used to have in the Army. I can give, as an NCO, as a sergeant first class, I can't promote my soldiers. I'm not an officer, and they have basic specialized boards for that. I can't give them a raise because I have nothing to do with that. So I can't. How do I motivate them? Well, I understood early on that the best way to motivate them is by time. You give a soldier a day off for doing a good job, they're going to want to do good jobs more often because they want that extra day off. And I can't give students a day off. I understand that. But building up to that, what I can do is that I can reward that extra effort that they're putting in. And that is, rewards are based on something that myself, that classroom lead, you and Mrs. Choronv, should I get the position, that I would be willing to come in and say, hey, these students are doing the best at this. Our scores are up. They're doing this. How can we work together to be able to find a way to reward that so they keep staying motivated? In order to keep up that motivation, like you said, you want to reward what keeps making them come back and do the right work and make sure everything is good. Well, you have to evaluate the student in order to be able to say what is good, what is bad. So what is the basis of your evaluation of the student? Well, Mr. Maker, evaluation in mathematics is a lot easier than it sounds. Since this position is for mathematics and not statistics, we know that math has an answer. Statistics is the ability to guess really well. But math, that's real work, and it has an answer. It will always have an answer. So the basis of the evaluation, the majority of it, comes from, did you get it? But at the same time, in mathematics, there's multiple steps to each problem, especially the higher up in different types of math studies that you do. You could have a problem that has 3 steps, 1 step, 27 steps. I know in the higher forms of calculus, you have a problem that could be as simple as 6 by 9, and it can have 42 steps. Now, if a problem is incorrect, as a teacher in that classroom, you can't just mark that whole thing wrong and just move on. You have to know the material well enough in order to be able to look at that problem and say, well, you brought over the variables correctly. You substituted this. You got the differentials. Oh, here's where you here's where you made a mistake. There's a negative sign here instead of a positive, or something simple. And if you are able to point that out to the student, then it's almost like autocorrect with spell check. Having those different areas of evaluation within that problem dial in on the specific problem that student may be experiencing at the time, focusing on that question. So evaluation in mathematics, although appears simple on the outside, either it is or it isn't, it can get very granular. And you can't, as a mathematics teacher, be that broad of an evaluator. You have to get granular and understand where they're making mistakes, if they are, and where you as an educator can help them improve. So my focus on evaluation is that you may not get the answer all the time, but you know how to get there. I don't need a very detailed Apple's Maps or Google Maps to get from here to New York. I need a compass, because where we are in Texas, New York is northeast of here. I can go from there. I may not get it on the first try. I may pass it, or I may hit someplace called the Turnpike up there and get lost. But I know where my mistake was once I'm done.
Yeah, that's going to help them a lot when they want to figure out where to start, where they are, and even just know what they're trying to do and how to get there. So that's a great philosophy. So my next question is, where do you see yourself in our campus in terms of what you feel like you can bring to enrich our students? How do you feel you would fit in if you get hired?
I have a very diverse background, from GED to military to math teacher. That's a very weird path to take. Life experiences can play a large part into molding the future of the students. If the students see that you're more than just a teacher and an educator, and you are actually a real person, that can also help motivate them as well. If you show the students that what they're doing in the classroom is actually applicable to a real person, to somebody that's actually been out there doing mathematics in real life, and showing them that there's more to it than that, then that helps as well too. That being said, with other subjects, I can help show potentially the other teachers and staff on campus that there's more to your subject than what those students think. There's more to history than just knowing what's in that book. You can teach the kids the future with history. There's more to any kind of ELAR whatsoever. You don't have to write notes to people like you're texting people. You can actually sound somewhat intelligible and know words that have multiple syllables to them, and understand that you can become a very complex communicator and get your point across to people in ways that you've never even imagined. Because it's very simple to just argue with somebody. Mm-hmm. But showing that there's more to this education that they're receiving than just what they see in front of them is what I hope to be able to stress to the other teachers in the building, is that there's more to your subject than what those students are seeing. And I want to be able to not only just motivate and teach mathematics at the 7th grade level, but I want to make sure that every teacher around me, whether it be in hallway, in building, lunchtime, reset, whatever the case may be, understands that there's more. Let the students actually see you as a person.
Why do you want to work on our campus?
Well, to be perfectly honest with you, this is a math position that entices me more than anything else. I've done my research. I've seen the STAR results for the past 5 years. I know what TEA's rating for the school is. I like the area. Everybody seems to have been pretty well nice to me, throughout my time here. I've been here for about a week now, basically for this interview. I feel like that this position opens up the possibility for me to become a member of a team here. I feel like that I have a skill set and the ability for this campus that isn't necessarily lacking, but something that I can help improve on. And I'm sure that at some point in time, that all of us have looked for jobs. We've been at that point where we got out of school, we got our teaching certificate, we're ready, we've had to drop more than one application. Let's be honest, I've got more than one application in. But I'm not above saying that with a retirement check, I'm not saying that I'm picky because I want to be. I'm picky because I want to go where I know I can make a difference.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I got asked that question before my first reenlistment. And I said, somewhere in East Texas, not here in Korea again. I was very, very wrong. As an educator, where I see myself in 5 years, the base of it is I want to still be in education. I do at some point want to continue on and work on my principal certification and possibly beyond. Because once you get stuck as a team leader or platoon sergeant or first sergeant, very hard to get that kind of role set out of your mind. I feel like that as a first year teacher, I can do the best for the students and also learn how to be the best educator from seasoned teachers around me, because I'm not going to be the only rookie teacher, or I am a rookie teacher, but I'm not going to be the most seasoned teacher because it's my first year. I'm surrounded by people who've been here way more than me. Learn from them, and then take what you gain from that, both good and bad experiences. As a principal, like I'm sure you've been this way yourself, Mr. Maker. As a principal, as a teacher, you say, I'm going to get that principal degree and I'm going to do something for teachers. Because as a strong principal goes, so are strong teachers. As strong teachers go, so are strong students. Do I want to leave the classroom? I don't know. Because as I was going through my hours requirements for the Troops to Teachers program in Texas, I enjoyed doing the classroom. I even enjoyed it when I was in the Army, being on the platform. But I know there comes a time to where the amount of experience that somebody can get is more valuable to young teachers like myself at this point than it is to stay in one single position and hold that knowledge to yourself in a greedy fashion.
So my last question is, do you have any questions for us?
To be perfectly honest with you, I don't really have too many questions, if any at all. I think everything's been pretty well covered in our discussion thus far. I know we've been here for a little bit. I don't want to beat that horse. You can take a horse to the water, and the next one is make them drown.
Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at your sample lesson. We emailed you some choices for TEKS. We asked you to pick 3 or 4 that you'd like to show us, and then from there we'll make some notes, and then we may even interact with you. So don't be turned away from our, even if this question is silly, don't be turned away from that. Just try to engage with us as well if you can. But we're trying to see what your interaction would be with the children. So you might find that our questions may be a little bit more juvenile, or it may be something at their level, but whenever you're ready, you're more than welcome to begin your lesson.
So I've got 3 problems here that follow the TEKS for 7th grade pre-algebra. And I'm going to do these in a particular order because one question will lead into the principles of the next question and so on. So our first question is, what is the solution set for negative 4x minus 10 is greater than or is less than or equal to 2? So let's go ahead and draw out on our board so we can visually get what's going on with this particular question. Now, this question has a couple of ideas that we need to understand first. That whatever answer that we give for X needs to be less than or equal to 2, right? Now, to break this down, we need to understand that this is a true-false set right here. So whatever we plug in here will make that true or make that false. And what we're looking for is true. Well, this problem has it can be broken down into 2 different problems. The first problem is negative 4x minus 10 equals 2, and negative 4x minus 10 is less than 2. So looking at these two, how did we get these 2 problems to begin with? Well, with these 2 simple sign changes for the solution of the problem. If you take equals and the less than sign and put them together, you have less than or equal to whatever the answer is supposed to be, right? Now, I'm going to erase number 2 for a second. And we're going to work on number 1. The reason we're going to work on this one first is because it has an equal sign in it. Equal tells us that it was and is and always will be equal to whatever that is. So since this is our first set and there's an equal sign in there, let's go ahead and solve for x to equal 2. To do so, we have to get rid or make our sides the same. We have a variable here, a non-variable, an actual number, and an actual number. Let's go ahead and add 10 to both sides. And that brings us down to negative 4x equals 12. These are like terms on both sides of the equal sign. So now we have variables on one side, actual numbers on the other. Let's solve for x. Divide both sides by negative 4. And that gives us x equals negative 3. Now, we know that this first problem has an x equals negative 3. And we can check that by simply plugging in. So I want to write, for now, x equals negative 3. And we're going to plug that in just to check our math and make sure that we're on the right track so far. Negative 4 times negative 3 puts us at positive 12. Minus 10, equals 2. 12 minus 10 is 2. So far, we have 2 equals 2. And that's correct, right? Because 2 does, in fact, equal 2. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So far, x equals negative 3 is correct. Now, our second problem that we derived from the original question was taking the exact same problem and testing it against the less than sign. Since we know that x equals negative 3 in our first check, which was the equal sign, we know that the rule of less than and greater than, and as far as trying to find a variable, this less than sign will swap to a greater than. And since we already know x equals negative 3, we can go ahead and bring that down and say x is greater than -3 for this problem. Or,
So,
excuse me, X is greater than -3 for this problem. Well, I'm going to put that right here for a second. X is greater than -3 for this problem of number 2 that we pulled out of this, right? Moving on. Let's check that. Oops, sorry. So let's go ahead and put in -4. Leave this open for a second. Minus 10 is less than 2. So let's go ahead and think of a number that is greater than -3. Any ideas?
-4.
-4. Is -4 greater than -3? Now, while the basic value of 4 is in fact greater than 3, we have to look at this with the negative signs on there. So let's double check that real quick before we move on. We know that our number line for this instance is going to be 0 in the middle. -3 is what we're trying to find something greater than. The suggestion was given that -4 could be placed in there as a value of greater than -3. But we know that's false according to our number line, even though the basic real number value is higher. But because it's a negative, subtracting a 1 from it will actually decrease the value of the number. The further away you get from 0 in the negatives is the lesser of the number. I know that's not grammatically correct, but you're getting further away from 0, which puts you further in the hole. Think of like a bank account. If you have $2 in there and you spend $1, you have $1. So you've gone from here to here. That's a -1. If you have -3 in your account and you want to increase your value, you want to add numbers to it, right? So moving this way allows us to increase the value of -3 into potentially positive integer later on.
Mhm.
So moving from -3 to -4 is moving to the left of our number line, which is identified here with a -1.
Mhm.
To find a number that is greater than -3, we have to add 1 to it. And we can follow our number line and understand that by adding 1 to -3, we're going to remove the number line for just a second. So -3 plus 1 equals -2.
Mhm.
Now, another way you could look at this is if you don't like messing with the positive and negative signs, you could say 1 minus 3. And that way it puts the signs in order for you.
Mhm.
You don't have any outstanding positive and negative signs that you got to worry about. But we know that both of these at the end of the day will still equal Everybody follow so far? Okay. So a greater value than -3 would be anything -2 and above. So let's go ahead and think of a number that is greater than -3. So let's
-1.
-1, right? So we're going to plug in -1 right here. And we're going to solve this following basic PEMDAS. -4 times -1, by multiplying 2 negatives together, I get a positive. 4 minus 10 is less than 2. So that's actually -6 because I'm taking 4 from a negative, or a positive 4 to a negative 10. As we saw on the number line, that moves it to the right. Is negative 6 less than 2?
Sure.
That is true, and that is correct. That is a true statement right there for our problem here. Any value of x that is greater than negative 3 makes this statement true. How do you know no? All we did was just test out something that was greater than negative 3. Because we tried that negative 4. So let's go ahead and look at our base problem. We've already solved for our 2 different sub-problems that come out of this because of the less than or equal to sign, right? I can actually take x equals negative 3 and x is greater than negative 3 and combine these two of x is greater than or equal to negative 3. And that's our solution to our original problem right here. So if I take any number of negative 3 itself or greater and plug it in here, it will make this condition true. Do I have any questions so far? As we move on, we have another question for, following the TEEPs for this particular grade level that kind of goes into ratio. And the hardest part about ratio is getting students to understand that one thing is relative to another. So we have a question that is, sorry, I had these out of order for just a second. Let's read through it together. The ratio of boys to girls in Ms. Cunningham's class is 2 to 3. There are 18 girls in the class. What is the total number of students in Ms. Cunningham's class? Well, let's take a second and look over the specific wording of this particular problem and see what we can pull out to give us indicators of assistance to help us derive the correct answer. The first word that I'm keying in on is ratio, because I know that in this question, in Ms. Cunningham's class, boys to girls is 2 to 3. Let's go ahead and put 2 to 3 up here. And in math, as far as mathematical signs, we're going to replace that word 2 with a semicolon. This indicates to me that this is a ratio. The English form of it, to actually put words to the signs that you're seeing on paper, is this: 2 to 3. 2 to 3, but this means ratio. You can replace it with the word 2. Now, we know that the ratio in Ms. Cunningham's class is 2 to 3. But what does that really mean? We have to understand what ratios mean in order to move on with this question. So I pose to you a ratio that is common in everyday use: a grilled cheese sandwich. A grilled cheese sandwich has a ratio. I'm going to erase this for a minute. Of 1 to 2. You may ask, how does a grilled cheese sandwich have a ratio of 1 to 2? Well, I'm here to show you. For every 1 slice of cheese, is our 1, we're going to have 2 slices of bread. And again, I just want to stress on the ratio portion that for every one of these, there will be 2 of these. And when you make a sandwich, you generally have 1 piece of bread at the beginning, 1 piece of bread at the end, something in the middle. And the ratio for a grilled cheese sandwich is 1 slice of cheese, 2 slices of bread. Now the ratio given in our problem was 2 to 3. So that tells us that for every 2 of these, there will be 3 of these. Well, which one of these do we know? Well, we know what they represent because in the first sentence it says the ratio of boys to girls in Miss Cunningham's class is 2 to 3. Right there, boys to girls, 2 to 3. And as we talked about a while ago, with ratios, is that this right here means 2, or ratio. So if I know that that could be interchanged with the word 2, I could say boys to girls, and I can even drive that down a little bit more and say boys, girls. And when I do that and then erase this one, we see that this ratio has a direct correlation to boys to girls. 2 boys for every 3 girls in this classroom. 2 to 3. And now we have a ratio that makes sense. Well, of these, do we know how many are there? In the problem, in the second sentence, it said, or in the question, or yeah, second sentence, said there are 18 girls in the class. Well, that's half the battle. And knowing is half the battle. So we have 18 girls, but we are unidentified on the number of boys as far as flat out numbers go. But we know this because boys is X, which we're going to declare X as our variable in this. Girls are 18. And there's something else I can bring down too, the ratio. So for 2 to 3 is X to 18. Now I'm going to clean my board up a little bit and we'll put that back up at the top. So we know our ratio is 2, 3, and what we're looking for is X to 18, right? This moves us into cross multiplication. The easiest way to figure this out is cross multiplication. So we know that 2 to 3 is of X 18. Now, these two are going to equal each other because this is a ratio. This is a ratio on top, and this is the ratio on the bottom. Numerator, denominator. The reason these are paired up is because each side are like items. We know that 2 boys, X boys, so number of boys in class. For 3 girls to 18 girls. We can't mix match these. We have to make sure that each side is like terms. To solve this, like I said, we're now into cross multiplication. It's basically just an X. You do whichever side you want first. Doesn't matter. We just make sure that 3 goes into X, 2 multiplies into 18. When we do that, we get 3X equals verify your math, 36. Working off of our last problem, we solved for X. We found our variable. Now, the difference between the last problem and this problem is, as far as the
finding the variable goes is that we have an equal sign. There ain't no guessing on this one. This was, is, and always will be whatever we find out X to be. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. To solve, we do the same thing. Divide both sides by 3. And X will be, yes, I always check my math. Because 3 times 12 is 36. X equals 12. Now, I'm going to slow down just a second. I want to stress this, that even though we found the variable of X equals 12, what does that X represent right now? Well, as far as within the problem itself, yes, we know X equals 12, but in the problem, what did we declare X as the value of, or the variable of?
Boys.
Right. The last question, the question posed in number 9 in this question was, what is the total number of students in Miss Cunningham's class? Do we want to know how many boys are in the class?
No,
Or do we want to know how many students are just in the class, period?
students.
Students, so boys and girls. This is where you'll kind of get stumped if you're not too careful though, because there will always be an answer available to you for selection that equals this. Make sure and check your math first. So if we have the total number of students, what student population was given to us at the very beginning of this question?
18 girls.
Right. So we have 18 girls here, and we have 12 what here?
Boys.
And the boys was held by what variable?
X.
Right. Basically, at this point, you just need to add the boys and the girls. Check your math. 30. There are 30 students in this class, boys and girls. 18 girls, 12 boys. Are there any questions so far?
No questions.
Okay. Our last question that we need to go over encompasses principles from the first 2 questions that we did. But it's going to take it up a notch. I don't know if anybody's ever watched Emerald Live. We're going to add a little bam to this. I'm going to let you know now that my drawing skills are about that of a blind ferret. So bear with me here. When I say that my drawing is not to scale or to ratio, that means that whatever I draw up here will not be exact ratio to what it is in real life. Another way that you can look at ratio and scale is that we have models. Model planes, model cars, and some of you may or may not have built those already. But let's think about scale for a second. Whenever your standard scale size for a model is 1 to 60. And what that means is 1 inch for every 60 inches. So if I were to take a model of a 1 to 60 scale of the battleship Texas, how much space on a tabletop would it generally take up? When I built it, it was about yay big. 2 feet, roughly. And that's a 1 to 60 ratio to the actual size of the battleship Texas, which is over 500 feet long. If I were to build on a 1-to-1, which means 1 inch for 1 inch, it wouldn't fit in this house. It'd sit on top of this house and flatten it. And it'd probably flatten every other house on the road. So you have to understand that ratio is almost a comparison, but on a smaller scale. Understand those words, scales, ratios. There's going to be key words throughout the course of this year. The diagram shows a door that has a window in it. Okay, so here we go.
I have a door, I have a window. Front faces of the door and the window are similar rectangles that have the dimensions shown. The total height of the door is 210 centimeters. Total width of the door is 84 centimeters. The width of the window is 60 centimeters. And the height of the window is noted with the variable of h. Well, let's take a second and look back at our question. I specifically want to point out the second sentence where it says the front faces of the door and the window are similar. The word similar indicates that this problem now is going to be a ratio problem. And if you understand the concepts of ratio and scale from the previous question, we can kind of skip a few steps and go straight to the comparison of ratio. So, tell me about this door here. What variables, am I trying to keep track of? I got one variable this way and one variable this way. This is what?
210 centimeters.
Well, I mean, 210 centimeters of what? The height of the door, right? And I have 84 centimeters of the width, right? Well, I have 60 centimeters of the width. I got like items. H is a representation of what?
Height.
Height. So I now have two sets of like items. Now I need to make sure that when I do set up my like items for my ratio comparison, that I need to make sure that they're in the proper order, whichever side I pick, and make sure that they go to what they each represent. Like terms together on both sides, right? So we're going to say H is height. H is the ratio going to 210. Height over width. What is the height, or what is the width of the window? Is it the 60 or the 84? The window itself, according to the question, is 60. So this height is matched up with the actual height of that window. The width is going to be 84 for 210 centimeters. Well, we have this. Where do we go? So for now, I'm going to erase the drawing because you should all have it on your assignment in front of you. And my drawings are very bad. This tells us cross multiplication is needed. 210 times 60 will equal 84H. That's what we have so far. Now, before we go any further, we need to multiply these two together. 210 and we'll go into 60. Which is 12,600. Equals 84H. Now on your homework assignments, I don't expect every single step you do to be written out. But I do expect
big keystone or big key markers within what your written work is. So I don't necessarily need to see how you got 12,600, but I need to know that you understand that it's going to be 210 times 60. So as long as you show it and it equals that, I don't have to see the actual multiplication to come out from that. So in order to find H, we have to divide both sides by 84. Doing so leaves us with H equals 150. 1 second while I check my math.
Mhm.
I should be able to take this, multiply them together and get this, right?
Right.
All right. That's correct. H equals 150. But wait, that's not all. Order now, and you can get more details on this problem. Meaning what? Is this the actual answer? No. This integer, this real integer, is unknown to have a understanding of really what's it's assigned to. It has no meaning. It's just 150, right? If we look at our problem, every measurement on this door was taken in what measurement type?
Centimeters.
Right. So it would go to reason that this last variable that was found to be equal to 150 would also be in the measurement of centimeter. Because every measurement on this door was taken in centimeters. So the correct answer is H equals 150 centimeters. The measurement type in this question is critical. You may or may not in the future see questions like this that have two answers with the same integer value of 150, but one of them has a measurement and the other one a measurement value and the other one doesn't. Or the measurement values may be different. This may be centimeters and there may be another answer that says 150 inches, or feet, or meters, or kilometers. Those are completely different values. If you look, there's an option on here that says not here.
Mhm.
Right above it, it says H, 150 centimeters. That's correct. But if it said inches, your other options are 66 centimeters, 186 centimeters. What do? You say it's not here because you don't see 150 centimeters if it ain't there.
Right.
So that's why measurement value on top of the real integer assignment to a variable that is equal matters.
Wonderful.
Do I have any questions following that?
No. Well, that was wonderful. Thank you so much. We appreciate you coming out here to meet us today and answer some of our questions. Mr. Maker, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. I think you've done an outstanding job today, and I look forward to talking with Mrs. Corey about this.
Yeah, I look forward to talking with Mr. Maker about your interview as well and your lesson. If you have any questions, please let us know, email us, or you can call, and we'll let you know in a few days what our responses to the job opening will be.
Thank you. I appreciate your time. Look forward to hearing back from you.
And we'll keep in touch.
Mr. Maker, I sure do appreciate your time and letting me interview today.
Wonderful.